For Reaper Metal Productions, I am Adam of Unbaptized Records, making a brand new video for you today on a rainy, shitty Monday. Today I just kind of wanted to go over my thoughts on some etiquette for shows, how I feel shows should go down as a fan, as a promoter, as a band, whatever it is. So what I like to see in a show, what I don't like to see in a show, and how I like to go to shows. So first of all, I always like to be extra prepared. So I was once described as a professional fan. So I always have all the albums out that I know I want to get signed by the bands, and I always try to see what bands are going to be at the show that I don't know, and if I'm familiar with the band a little bit but I don't know all the members, just checking to see who's going to be there so I don't look like a dumbass when I try to get something signed by a member who isn't on that particular release. So just trying to see what the lineup is, especially if it's not a band I'm super familiar with but I do own maybe one release by them. And then usually, without a doubt, the newest release, for some exception, but for the most part, the newest release is going to have all of the current members in the band. So if I have that release, bringing it with me, having all the bands sign it, kind of makes sense. And if I'm getting LPs signed, I'll take out the record, just bring the LP sleeve with markers. Same with CDs. If I listen to the CDs on the way, I'll just take out the sleeve that's getting signed and just leave the CD in the car or at home. Same with like a 7-inch and tape, same thing too. The little J card or O card, bring that with me. Put it in a little bag, and always check the bag policy because clubs get really stupid with that stuff. Sometimes they want a 1 foot by 1 foot bag only, has to be clear, all this shit. So I'm not going to drive all the way to like Boston from Connecticut, 2.5 hours, get there with LPs to get signed, and then get turned away at the door because my bag isn't compliant, which is really stupid. So I always try to make sure that's the case as well. Stupid little things too, like checking out the venue ahead of time if I've never been there, so seeing what the parking situation is like. I don't want to get there, get caught with my pants down, and have no money if parking is $20, or if it's takes quarters because it's street parking and they still have the little machines in the street. So, whatever it is, if it's digital, making sure I just have something in my wallet. If it's going to take a credit card and it's out of state, make sure that my card is ready for it, because I have a small little bank where if you leave the state, it'll flag it and may decline it. Something stupid. It's not like I don't have the money, but if you got to park and you need to pay by card only and I have cash, it's just stupid shit like that. You just don't want to get in a situation where you're all the way out of state and you just can't go to a show because of something stupid out of your control. So if it's something I could fix or avoid, I always love when venues actually have parking, but so few seem to, especially in the cities. So it's just some crap I have to deal with and try to prepare the best I can. And then once I've been to a venue, keep mental track of what the venue is like, what the parking is like, all that stuff, which it seems minor to most people, but when you're traveling far out of state by yourself, it would be really annoying having to turn around if you have no other option, or spend a bunch of money to park somewhere, or get stuck in a parking garage. That stuff does happen. It's really stupid and it shouldn't happen, but it does. So I'd rather avoid it the best I can ahead of time. The thing for the venues is I always like a venue that has good visibility. And you would think, well, no duh, that would be obvious. You're there for a show, you have a stage, and then you want to make sure everyone can see the stage. Well, not everyone takes those notes into consideration, because I went to a venue recently in Massachusetts. It'll remain nameless, but if you've been following this channel or my Instagram, you'll know, because it was one of the last ones I posted. And there's a middle section, and then the two side sections. One has a bar, one has a bathroom really close to where the people set up their stands for the bands to sell their merch and shit. And unfortunately, there's these two walls that are right on both sides of the stage that cut down a little bit, so you could still see the stage, but not very well. And that was really annoying, because being a very low capacity building of maybe 200 maximum, you now have 40 to 50 people on both sides of the stage that have limited visibility, which is just really stupid. Probably pretty easily avoidable. So that was a dumb choice on the venue's just building schematics. I don't know if these were all like load-bearing poles that had to be there, but they probably could have done better. They could have moved the ceiling that came down a little bit higher up and just had the load-bearing poles there. It was really dumb, and it decreased visibility for about a third or half the people at the show, so that was really dumb. Another thing is just overselling, overpacked. People want to make money, I get it. It's not always cheap to put on these shows, but then overselling and you're crowded in like sardines, that's no good either. especially when it's a show where people are obviously moshing, or if it's the stupid hardcore kids throwing around and they're just throwing punches and kicks into the freaking air. I don't want to have my nose broken by some overzealous 17-year-old. Like, I got shit to do the next day. I can't be dealing with that, especially if I'm standing outside the pit and they still manage to get near me. So that's always dumb. And then, of course, it's just a matter of timing. I always love the earlier shows that can get out early because, again, not everyone lives down the street and not everyone works 20 hours a week or less. Most people probably have regular jobs, 9 to 5, and have to get up and have responsibilities the next day or even later that day. So it's always good when a show ends early enough, and the in-between taking down of the previous band, setting up for the next band, that has been, I feel like, increased in speed dramatically, exponentially. I remember going to shows pre-COVID, and I feel like it would take so long in between bands. I feel like nowadays, unless there's something wrong with one of the bands or the venues, they're done in 15 minutes. And I guess unless there's pyrotechnics or a giant setup involved, and even then sometimes they're pretty good, in between bands has actually gotten really quick. I feel like that takedown and setup has just been perfected by a lot of bands. So luckily that's not really an issue I see, which is awesome. The only other thing is really just how lucky you get with the bands that are there. So obviously it would be nice if every single band on the show is one I either want to see, know of, or enjoy afterwards. So one of the recent shows I went to, 2 of the 3 bands were bands I wanted to see, and the third band I was happily surprised, bought their music, enjoyed them thoroughly. That's pretty rare. Even 4 bands, it's not asking a lot, but usually only 1 or 2 are the bands I'm actually there to see. The other ones I'm hoping to be surprised, and it's 50-50. It depends. So obviously you can't cater to everyone, but you would want to have bands that are similar to each other. It is weird when you have an extreme death metal band sometimes touring with a local band, and the local band just isn't very good, and that happens sometimes. So that's obviously unfortunate, but that's when, if you know the band is going to suck, or you just don't know the band at all and you don't care, you show up a little late. So you take that to your advantage and know just when the order of the bands are going to play, and you just say, hey man, if the third and fourth band that are going to play are the last at the headliner and the one right before, I'll just go and show up halfway through the venue, through the show. That's fine too. It is unfortunate, but again, you can't cater to everyone. It's just you do try your best as a promoter to hopefully put on a show that most of the bands sound similar or are in the wheelhouse of the headlining band. Otherwise, you're not really doing your job correctly. And then the last thing would just be how many bands. There's got to be a limit. I think 5 is probably a good limit. There are some shows where they'll have 10, 12 bands, especially if it's a tour, a big tour, the Summer Slaughter tour, where you're expecting a lot of bands to play, or you have multiple stages. That's just the kind of thing where you just have to deal with it. You have to pick and choose when you're going to go. It's always unfortunate when there are multiple stages that play at the same time in a bigger venue, because you're doing just a big festival, and then you have to figure out which bands are playing when, and sometimes 2 of the bands you want to see play at the same time. Obviously that fucking sucks, and then you have to figure out which one you want to see more. Luckily that doesn't happen too often to me. Usually I just go to shows where bands just play one after another, but if it does happen, just do your homework ahead of time. Usually the band times are pretty accurate, again, especially with whatever happened to people. Maybe they just got bored over COVID, not doing a lot of shows, and somehow at home perfected the art of taking down and setting up band instruments and amps and mics and everything in between, because again, I feel like that's been done really well recently. So as long as those are accurate and people are doing their job quickly, which again they really seem to, then hopefully those times are accurate. So then you just have to pick and choose, and if there's some overlap, watch a little bit of one band, then another, or do what you kind of would for buying music. You pick the thing that's going to be a little more rare, a little less likely that you're going to see, you go see them. If vinyl is selling out, there's 100 of these, 100 of those. One band represses their album every 10 minutes. The other one you never hear of ever again once they press it for the first time. Well, you're going to pick up the more rare thing. So same with going to concerts. But again, luckily that doesn't happen to me too often, and I also don't go to a ton of venues where the parking's really expensive, because that also fucking sucks too. Going to a big venue where you're on lawn tickets and it's $25 and then parking's $50, which can happen. I can think of one venue out in Massachusetts where it was a bunch of more punk bands, and the tickets were like maybe 80 or $100, so they were decent. They were like right outside of the lawn seats, but tickets, started in the lawn seat for like 50, and parking was also 50. So I'm driving 2.5 hours, and then an additional $50 to park, which is the most I've ever spent, which is unfortunate. So luckily that's like a one and done situation. I think I'm actually, maybe one more time going back to this venue again in late July. So it'll be another $50, but at least I know ahead of time, because that's just a lot of money when your tickets are only about 50. So it is what it is. But again, being prepared is the most important thing, especially for me, because I travel outside of state for most of the show. So that's all I have for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about venue decorum and just showing up, and if there's anything special you guys do, or if you just show up and say whatever the fuck happens. I don't give a shit. I'm not buying band merch. I'm just gonna drink and forget about the night and hopefully get home without hitting someone. So let me know in the comments. Hopefully that's not you, but either way, I'll see you in the next video.